Wen People Talk, Community Podcast. Wen People Talk, Community Podcast, yeah.
Hey everyone, I just want to welcome you all to the Wen People Talk podcast. This is episode number 2. I am seasoned vocal cord exchange, and I'm really excited to have our second guest here, Simon Yu. You guys should all know him. So Simon, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello,
Yeah.
and thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. So interesting thing I want to open with. It's kind of off the wall, strange, but I was thinking the other day, I have a 10-year-old son, and when I was his age, the thing I wanted to be when I grew up was a comedian, of all things. So if you'll humor me just a little bit, I'm going to try some dad jokes. It's digging deep in my repertoire. So if you want to grade them on a scale of 1 to 10, let me know which ones are good. I'd appreciate that. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right, man. So
I love that jokes.
all right, great. So what do you call 2 monkeys that buy something on Amazon?
I don't know.
Primates.
Nice.
1 to 10, 5, 4.
That was pretty cheesy. 5.
All right, good. All right. When does a joke become a dad joke?
When people awkwardly laugh.
When it becomes apparent.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, this is the last one. So pain's almost over. Did you hear about the concert that cost 45 cents?
Oh.
It's headlined by 50 Cent featuring Nickelback.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, man.
Okay, nice.
So I should not quit my day job, is what you're saying.
maybe a little bit practice study.
Yeah. I killed the delivery there. But anyway, speaking of 50 Cent, I'm curious, did you catch the Super Bowl halftime show?
Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you think of it? Did you like it?
I like I like the music, and then bring it back, like Dr. Dre playing piano, and I think I made a joke about 50 Cent, about how bad inflation was, and he turned it to $1.
I think I saw that one on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that any kind of music? Did you like that kind of music growing up? Was it something you connected with much?
I really love sort of all types of music. I don't really discriminate, but yeah, hip hop I love.
Yeah.
Growing up.
Do you have a favorite artist that performed in the halftime show?
They're all good. It's hard to say. It's just like a collaboration of all the like little bits and pieces of like Snoop and Dr. Dre and it was awesome.
Yeah. Did you get into that like West Coast, East Coast thing at all, or is that something you kind of avoided?
That was too early for my time, I think.
Okay. Yeah. That was really something I grew up through, and it was like, oh my goodness, like Pac's dead, then Biggie's dead, and it was like, no, this ruined my adolescence.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. So you did listen to it a little bit growing up. Like, was that something you had to like hide from your parents at all? Because that was like something I had to do. They were like, they knew I was in so much trouble.
No, it's really funny because like I grew up like listening to Eminem, and like elementary school we had like the CD players, and we would listen to it all the time. And my parents didn't speak a jack of English at all, so like you hear them dropping F-bombs and like all these sexual terms and stuff like that too, and they have no idea what I'm listening to. So it's just never got in trouble. It's just but then again, like I think in like your early days too, like all the kids like sing like Candy Shop or something like that from 50 Cent, but they have no idea what it means. They just sing the lyrics, but they
have no idea. Yeah.
There was
Yeah,
if
that's
you're a parent listening to it, it'd be like, what is my kid listening to? But I never got in trouble.
Oh, that's so good, man. Like so there was always like a little bit of like you had a little bit of freedom, a little bit, because your parents were like I guess they didn't speak English at that time. That's lucky, man, because like I didn't have that freedom. They were all on me, man. But were your parents pretty like tight with like culture growing up? I mean, were you like very traditional Korean home, or was it like were you had a lot of freedom to kind of just explore the American culture?
Yeah, I think, well, so I have two older sisters and they're, like 11 and 9 years older. And with them, my parents were definitely very strict, like, very strict curfew, like do this, do that, like go to after school programs, etc. For me, I kind of had the opposite approach. I grew up with a lot of freedom because my parents were always working. They would leave, they had a small business. They would leave at like 9 a.m. I want to come back home till like 11:30 like p.m. So they just work like 7 days a week. Like only days they ever took off was I think like Christmas and New Year's, and that was it.
Wow.
And that's sort of where I learned my work ethic too. I just saw them working for like not even close to like half the opportunity that I currently have to. So just like it keeps me motivated to work as hard as I can with immigrant parents. And I think though because I did have the freedom, I sort of had an open mind to a lot of things. Like I'm very like, and I can talk a lot about like sort of how Asian culture is really bad at killing creativity and stuff like that, because a lot of Asian parents will make you try to study as hard as you can. And like in Asia, it's pretty crazy. Like people are in after school programs, like students are in like elementary school, like middle school, are literally out till 2, 3 in the morning studying at like math or English camps or something like that, like after school, which is like every day and during the weekday
Wow.
or weekend. And it's just like, okay, so you're really good at memorizing things, but then when someone puts you on the spot and like tries to make you think of a creative solution, you're not trained to think that way, and so it sort of makes you dumber in a way, even though like on paper or by book standards you might be smart. But it's just a bad way of teaching. I really liked growing up in America because I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of like music. I did you know lots of like I did study and stuff like that too. But just outside of just school, like there's so much extracurricular stuff that I could do
Hmm.
to sort of help me shape as like all these different personalities and perspectives, which is really valuable to me, I think.
So you think that was a consequence that like your parents were so busy, you had a lot of freedom, or you think your parents are just like that was the mindset they had, that they kind of wanted to give you a little bit more freedom in how you kind of grew into yourself?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't have any time to watch me or like watch over me or like try to tell me what to do at exact times because they were never there. But and they also trusted me too because I never got in trouble. I always whatever rules that they set that I did not break it. And my sisters were a little bit of a heartbreaker for my parents. They would like you know get caught with alcohol or something like that in high school. My parents would cry and do all this stuff. And I saw that and I just, I'm like, I don't want to cause them pain. So I did my best. And because they trusted me too, there was like this, back and forth relationship where I was able to sort of just do whatever I wanted. And yeah, and it definitely did help me with my career path as well too, just being able to think clearly. And um, running a startup, it's always putting out fires. Everyone, sort of like because of movies and Hollywood and all this stuff, you tend to only see the good things because even in the bad parts where like in a movie it's an hour and a half, like they build up all this like struggle that you have to go through, like pursuit of happiness or something. But at the end of the day, it's like 30 minutes, right? But when you're actually living this life, it's like years and years of pain that you have to go through of like being broke and like spending so many hours and sacrificing everything else just to be able to just work for one company kind of thing. And um it's very different. And so like one of the like for us too, when we're hiring, like I need people that are able to critically think because every day is a different situation and it's always a different fire to put out, but you have to sort of prioritize which fire to put out. So like an example interview question I'd ask is like, imagine there's 10 houses on fire. Like one has your grandma, one has your mom, like one has your dog, one has all your money, one has all your clothes, one has your car. Like what would you do in that situation? And just kind of throw it out there.
Yeah.
And I want to hear how people's mind thinks to try to, like the worst answer is just kind of like people freeze up. And then the bad, equally kind of bad answer too is just like not putting a lot of thought into it. Just be like, oh, I'd call the fire department and that's it. But like the best answer would be like, okay, shit, like there's houses on fire. Like, what do I have to do? So like I will run out screaming fire, fire, fire. So I would wake up all the neighbors, have the neighbors call the cops, and then try to think and prioritize like, okay, in the beginning, I have to go save human lives. So, all right, my mom and my girlfriend or whatever, or dog, or like which ones can I save? And human life should be the most important, to try to prioritize what could I do in that situation. Like, is there enough time, and try to analyze like what, what's savable, what's not. Like, and for clothes and money and stuff like that, is it insured? If it is, let it burn. Like, doesn't matter. Like, just let it burn, let it catch on fire. There's so many different decisions that you make. But when you're going back to the sort of Asian culture kind of thing, when you're just constantly told to just follow a strict schedule, read books, memorize, and follow the rules and stuff like that, when you're put in that situation, you don't know how to react. You don't know how to respond to a critical situation. And so, yeah, I think those skills like definitely help me, shape into being a better leader and stuff like that. As my career.
So you really like to hear what people have to say, like almost from our first principles, like how do they construct what they do and how they're going to react. And so it's kind of like your first principles are more important than necessarily like the perfect answer type deal. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
And that's the thing. There in real life, there is never a perfect answer. Like in math, science, or something like that. Like science sometimes, but like there's a black and white answer, right? But like especially with running a company and all this stuff, it's very ambiguous. And there's life is all about path and like choosing which path that you want to take. And regardless of which path you take, yes, you can mess up. But if you mess up, learn from your mistake and try not to make that same mistake again. But a lot of people are also afraid to take risks because they're afraid to mess up and choosing that wrong path, which ultimately leads them to taking the wrong path, which is also unfortunate as well. But yeah, lots of interesting things. But like you said, there's never a perfect answer. I just want to hear thought process into, all right, you're given this scenario. How are you able to best optimize the correct solution for this? And it doesn't have to be correct, but at least try to get there and own up to it if you still made a mistake.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you caught Elon on Lex Fridman's podcast recently. Did you catch that or no? Yeah, it was interesting to see Elon's mind move on one thing. He was kind of like saying that they try to build a sort of like, we're going towards this path. We want this thing out that's further out. And then he's like, you're never going to get the perfect path when you first start. But he's like, as you progress towards it, you just kind of take the feedback, you take the information, you refine your path, and you kind of make those incremental adjustments as you go. And you kind of have to have that kind of mindset, because like that's like, you don't have the perfect solution, especially at the outset. I think a lot of times when you're trying to navigate towards a goal or an objective. So yeah, it's kind of like people need that mindset that they can adjust, they can, it's not that you don't try to have a perfect plan, but you have to know that it's not perfect, and there's adjustments as you go. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective, and the way you put that together was kind of insightful.
And that really is, sort of the one edge that we have against machines right now too, is, machines are, trying to do AI machine learning, it's getting better, and eventually the machines will be able to beat us in every single scenario that we possibly can. But as of right now, it is the critical thinking and us being able to adjust into different decision making is the one edge that we have right now, which is we should take advantage of it for the 20-30 years that we have left.
Not optimistic, huh?
Yeah.
But I'm kind of interested to discuss something with you, Simon. I had seen you, you were with Rob on Digital Asset News one time, and you guys kind of had like an impromptu, just like back and forth. And it was really interesting catching that. And one thing you guys touched on was education, and you were kind of discussing just the education system, and you kind of, you had some interesting thoughts that you shared on that. And I don't know if you have any interest in kind of expanding on that a little bit, but I'm kind of curious, what do you see as things that like would be better or a better addition to the way education is kind of done in America right now?
Yeah. Oh man, that's it's a topic. I definitely have a lot of, I think, controversial topics that sometimes get on people's nerves. But I mean, I grew up as a poor immigrant, and oftentimes a mindset into like what Asian immigrant parents think is like, get a good job and get a good salary, and then you're going to be set for life. But if you look at all the statistics and numbers, like the way that inflation has rising, like even without all the money printing too, like millennials can never afford a home and all this stuff. Like I originally thought before entering college that if I made $60K a year, that I would be rich and I would be content with my life. Post graduation, I made a little bit more than that, but I could barely pay off my student loans plus rent. I was like, okay, this is all right, clearly effed. Like this is, and the thing is, like, I only had 1 year of student loans because I got a scholarship for the rest of the, I got grants and scholarships for the rest of the way. And so, like, if someone who was doing this with 4 years of degrees, like, they definitely can't pay this off. And like, I actually was like one of the guys that got a good job post college. I'm like, okay, clearly something is broken. And like, you look at how, like, our tuition had raised every single year by 10%, and there's no cap. And so in our parents' generation, I think, you know, Gen Xers, like, it made sense to go to college because it was kind of a rare thing, and then you get a good job and you can afford a house because house only costs like a few months of salaries, for example. But now you have to really think differently. Then college education almost doesn't make sense anymore unless it's like a top 10 school where, you know, you're going there to network more so than actually going for education. Because I learned so much. I love learning. Like, that's just my passion. I love, like, whether it's something like about poker or like school, or I mean, like a certain topic, or just something completely random. Like, I used to be really in StarCraft, so like just looking at different strategies, just whatever the path is. Like, you don't need to pay like tens of thousands of dollars to be able to learn a specific subject just to get you a job. Like, if you want to learn a job, like you want to be in accounting, for example, you should just study like 6 to 12 months of accounting principles and courses. Just that on, like, there's like YouTube, and there's, you know, like Coursera, and, you know, Fiverr. There's so many different ways that you could look into courses that you can actually get that path into helping, you know, you into your career, rather than spending so much money just being in debt and then not being able to recover, and you can't even write it off because, you know, there's no bankruptcy laws against schools. So you're ultimately putting the lower and middle class into a worse position by taking them into education, if the ultimate goal is to try to get a good salary job. Because people will often make the mistake of just looking at assets and your earnings and or the revenue side of things, but then they're not looking at their liabilities. And you need to look at both sides of things in order for you to be financially well off. And right now, that those numbers haven't made sense for almost a decade for college loans and stuff like that. And definitely, like, one of the most important things that we should do is, from a high school level, educate these kids and telling them, like, if you want to go to this school and you want to be in this major, it's fine, but you're going to be in $300,000 in debt. This is how much your monthly payments are going to be. If you were to get this job, you're still not going to be able to pay it off. Even you're going to be able to pay off $5 of interest every month for the next 35 years and still not pay off the loan.
Yeah.
And right now, we're giving all these kids that can't even drink or smoke, like, responsibilities of having a 6-figure debt before they even sign on. And by the time they're, you know, getting into adulthood, they're financially screwed. They can't do anything. And that's why, like, birth rates and all this stuff is dropping, because people can't even afford having kids anymore. They can't afford houses. And like in Asia, it's super bad. Like, the government's like incentivizing people to pay, you know, they're incentivizing families to have babies. Like, the subsidies, like, are very generous because nobody wants to have kids anymore.
I'm curious, is it the same, is it a very similar dynamic in other countries? Like, is it that way in Asia, where the cost of the education is so out of line with the jobs that you can get that pay off the education? Or is it more like a US kind of problem, do you think?
I mean, education is definitely way cheaper, but it's still expensive compared to the salaries that they can earn in Asia.
Okay.
US, where, I mean, Asia is like here on a bad level. US, we're here. Like,
Yeah.
I love our country, but the few things that we really have messed up on is, yeah, education and also healthcare, right? So you go to any other country and healthcare is generally free, that includes all the taxes, because insurance companies are technically not allowed to privatize and rack up their rates and stuff like that. So just, there are things that we could, you know, do to improve as a country. But I mean, like, I could do a whole, like, step by step on, like, if I were to go bankrupt and, you know, I didn't have any of the networks that I have, so I can't find a job, kind of thing, how I would, you know, go back to being, you know, 6-figure to $1 million, you know, salary right away. And right now would be to drop everything, learn how to code, and then work for a tech company as a developer. And that would be the fastest path. You don't like lawyers, doctors, even, it doesn't make sense anymore, because unless you love your job and you want to do it, from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense, because you'll be so heavily in debt if you're not already able to cover that, to make those salaries, because you have to go to law school and medical school for like 10 years. But for computer programmers, like you could study 6 to 12 months very aggressively. It's not easy. You have to study your ass off, but it is possible to earn a 6-figure salary after you become a programmer, because that's where we're headed into a technology world. So
yeah, like my experience was like I personally don't have a college degree. I had started going to I was going an engineering path. I was going to be a chemical engineer. I ended up getting into a family business, and it was interesting because I switched then to a business degree, and I thought I was going to get a lot of education there, and there was some valuable information that I gained, but there was nothing like the actual experience of just doing the job. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I learned so much more, and it takes way less time, and I don't have to pay anybody to learn it. And so it was just, that experience for me was very eye-opening, because my parents had meager means, and so I had to fund my own education. But that process of me saying I have to take on all my own student debt, and made me really crunch the numbers. And for me, it didn't make sense to do it. And it just, I had friends whose parents, for so long, like the simple path was go to college. They're like, it's like bank on it. Go to college, get an education, get a good job, have a family, have a house, and everything works itself out. Yeah. It's just interesting to see how that shifted slowly. And it's gone way past the point where it's, I still think it applies for some degrees, clearly. Yeah. But like you said, at the higher level institutions, it's more networking. You're paying for a network. You're not, in addition to an education, but for other people, if you're excluded from that network, you're kind of, you just have to hope you pick a major that can pay the bill. But it's just, from my experience, it was such an interesting one, because it like really opened my eyes at probably, this is maybe, oh man, like 20 years ago, really opened my eyes that like, wow, this deal of college isn't as a slam dunk as I think people make it out to be. And I wish it wasn't that way, but I guess it is.
And the thing is, you realize this early on, right? So you're financially better off, but you're like, as well too. So it's just, people are brainwashed into believing a certain way, and a human being is very intelligent, but if you get a mass, like I think it was actually a quote from Independence Day. It was like one individual is very intelligent, but if you get a mass of people, or like, then they become dumb. Like it's just groupthink it can be very dangerous. And then I think I mentioned this in Rob's podcast as well too, which is like Robert Kiyosaki believes that this is intentional. Like they're intentionally not teaching high school kids how to be financially literate, because you need people to work. You need people to be in normal, salary jobs that people don't want to work in, or you sort of see like what happened with the fast food industries, where nobody wants to work in fast food anymore, and then all the stores were closing down even though there was demand. And like it's sort of a massive system.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because like I've thought about even the education model. It's kind of structured that way, where you have like the bell, like it's almost like set up like a factory, and people have commented on that, where it's almost like you're training people in education to be set for this, or sort of like top down approach. And it's interesting, because like I have a daughter, and she's been diagnosed with ADHD, and like that kind of model for her just doesn't work. She needs creativity, she needs freedom, she needs engagement, and it's like I see they're squeezing out recess, they're squeezing out all these things where you let kids be kids and get that energy out. And it's like, luckily for us, we have her in a school where it caters to her very well. But it's just interesting that model almost produces exactly, I don't know where to place the intentionality of the system, but it does feel like sometimes you're like, what's going on? Why is it structured this way? Products, and it's like,
it's profit at the end of the day.
Yeah, probably. Right?
Schools make money too, so it's just. There was this like video, and I don't know if you saw it, where you sat a kid down to listen to like a 2-hour math seminar, and he was going like all over the place, and he was so bored, and he was just like playing around with his chair and like moving around a bunch. But then and then there was another video of him just watching Star Wars for 2 hours, and he was perfectly still the whole time, right? So it's just like kids need a lot of creativity and freedom, and like they have short attention spans. It's just normal. But if the subject is boring, they're not gonna sit down and pay attention because they're kids. But like if it's interesting, then they will. So it's just like, well, it was actually one thing that like one of my many jobs that I did to try to, struggle to pay rent and stuff. Like I was a guitar tutor for a while, and then like the Asian stuff, I hated. Like I actually bought a piano because I was trying to learn by myself, but I hated learning piano as a kid, and because like in Asia, like every time I got it wrong, they used to hit my hand with a ruler and piss me off, and it hurt so bad that I would like cry sometimes because I was like a four-year-old, and it's just like that kind of discipline, like that negative reinforcement doesn't want, like you can't teach kids that way. Like they hate it. It just becomes like a horror thing. I hated piano for so long, and now like I hear all this music and like jazz and stuff, and it's just so beautiful, and I want to learn it by myself, and when I was teaching guitar, like I didn't want to have that same kind of path. And when people want to learn a music instrument, it's because like the first thing that they want to do is be able to say like, oh, I can play this song, right? So before I told them how to read music or teach them about notes or any all that stuff, I just taught them finger movements of one easy song that they could learn, and spent the first lesson an hour teaching them how to play that. So all of a sudden, these kids, they're like high school, middle school kids, they're like, they learned how to play one song, and now they're so happy. They're showing it off to their parents, they're showing it off to their friends and all this stuff. And now they're so excited, like because they're so excited that I can play this instrument. Now they can like, they're curious about why is a C note a C note? Like why is a D? Like why is all these major frets, minors? And they're now curious. And so even for education, that's why I really love YouTube, because like if your content is boring, no one's going to watch it. So the stuff that pops up in the algorithms, it's actually very entertaining. So if I want to learn about like how to learn how to play piano, like these guys do it in a very entertaining way where I'm able to learn so much better than when the teacher used to just smack me with the ruler, every time. So, to your, the daughter's point too, I think our current like elementary education system too is they're just not doing a good job teaching kids in a right way. I think there's definitely certain teachers that like certain science teachers that I had to like make experiments and stuff so fun that I learned so much, and I was just so curious about it, versus like some English teachers and stuff like that I've had in the past where they could make it interesting with Shakespeare and all these stories and stuff like that, but they just make you memorize and do all this boring stuff that kids don't really need like to understand or learn. And so but then like our public schools have such a low budget that it's hard to like even come up with creative solutions or hire the best teachers to be able to educate our young ones. So
yeah, it's a shame. It's like kind of built on a cost model, so it's like they have constraints, and more creative teaching maybe requires more people, and it's like not in the budget. But it was really interesting because when we had with the pandemic and everything, when all the school went to virtual and everyone was working at home, and at that time I had a kindergartner, and so she was really young, and we were helping her because she needed that to get on the Zoom calls, do all that stuff. It was really interesting to watch her learn though, because like you said, the more interesting the videos and things like that, she really, she was there, she was engaged. And it was even like silly things too, just keeping herself busy. We'd give her gum, which you can't do in school, but at home we're like, here, have some gum, and just putting a piece of gum in her mouth. She was able to focus better. It's just like, little things like that. I'm like, what if there are lots of little things like that? And suddenly all these kids that we put into a category of disordered, suddenly they're not, and they're able to learn a lot and flourish more. And so it's just things like that. It was interesting. Like that was the one benefit of the pandemic, was to be able to have a front row seat to see how my daughter learned. And I'm not saying that everyone will learn that way or everyone should learn that way, but it was nice to see that, and to see, like you said, the more engaging that the content was, the more entertaining it was. She was doing great. And
laser focus.
Yeah, it was really interesting how that works out that way. But so one question I have for you, I don't know if you caught the episode I did with Martine, but I have like this reoccurring question that I'm going to ask everybody I talk to, and so hopefully you've had time to think about it. But I'm kind of curious. Do you have a superpower, and if you do, what do you think it is?
My superpower is I'm able to see a lot of things ahead of their time. I mean, like not just because I got into crypto early and stuff like that too, but see a lot of trends that I know are going to happen early. And it's because of this, I think this is my strength, and that has helped me build, sort of like just continuing, like not just career, but everything in my life. But it's also a weakness because like I say something and then everyone thinks I'm weird because I'm so kind of ahead of my time. So like the COVID thing is also a perfect example. So like I was in Asia, I sort of I have family in Asia and like stuff like that too. So COVID started happening in Asia first, right? Like December, January. And then we have a really bad healthcare system. And like even in Asia, they were having a hard time containing this. And then I back in like late January, early February, I started thinking this is probably already in the US, but we're not testing it. Like if this hits the US, we're gonna get fucked. Like, like, now, with all the data, it's not as bad. Like once you have it, like I've had COVID too, but like at that time, like it was such an uncertainty. Like there were so many unknowns, and like, and I was right. Like US has started spreading like wildfire, but like until like March 11th, which was when Tom Hanks and an NBA player both got COVID at the same time. That's when the markets nuked. I put a short on a very aggressive short on a couple of companies because I thought like one, we were like stock market was already overblown quite a bit, but this thing is gonna hit US hard, and then everything is gonna be like at that time, like China was very extreme. They were like locking people inside, and like there were drones flying around and like catching people's temperatures and all this stuff too. And I'm like it's not going to get as bad as in the US, but it's going to get to a point where like things are going to get locked down, and then it's going to cause the markets to tank, etc. I made a gotcha ton of money on that. But like it was one thing, like, and then I had, a story about, over shorting Tesla, and then Elon Musk did some sketchy things to try to pump it back up. That's a long story for another time. But I was very aggressively, and this was like, so Facebook, I still keep among just like my high school, like college and like work friends that I've had, and it's closed off. But like on Twitter and Facebook, I used to post like all this negative stuff about how like, oh man, this thing's going to hit the US hard. I have a very aggressive short, like we're kind of fucked kind of thing. And then there were some angry like responses saying like, you're retarded, like this thing, like it's just like there's not much data, even from my doctor friends too. And then they're like, you're overblowing, you're trying to create this like scare, like you're trying to scare everybody, and like you should stop posting and all this stuff. Like I still have those DMs. Facebook, you can't delete it. So I was like, and like so like one, that's a superpower, being able to see the foresight, helped me make a lot of money. But then two, it makes me sort of into a freak. Like I am oftentimes categorized as the ugly duckling, right? So the same thing with, starting a crypto company back in 2014-15. We literally pitched to like every investor out there, and they thought we were selling some tulip farm frenzy, or like, like it was just such a wild time. Like we couldn't even get like raise like $50,000. That's like, it was a wild time. And, now in hindsight, like, this was like the best thing that ever happened. But like 3 years of constantly going into meetings and then being laughed out of the room, like that's a very tough, like, life that you have to live in. But it's not, and that's sort of been my life. I'm always like, it's always been sort of like that. And but I don't know. It's
well, like I've heard like people say like being genius or whatever is a very steep pitched roof, and you only get to be a genius if you stand on the top of it. But like you move a little bit to one side or the other and you're falling, and everyone's going to call you a fool and an idiot and stuff like that. But like it's a tough road to walk sometimes when you're you're so clearly seeing that future. You're like, I see it, and everyone thinks you're crazy. But
yeah.
But where do you get the conviction to stand for that though? Because it's tough when people all around you are thinking you're nuts, but obviously you have the conviction in it.
Yeah, I'm wrong oftentimes as well too, but it's just like, if I'm wrong, like why was I wrong? Like how could I prevent this? Again, it's going back to like, not every decision can be perfect, but usually I have some sort of stake on the line of like, I really believe this for the sake of, because I do feel this confident. Like I did like, we've been in a crypto bear market for the last few months, but like, according to all the information that I had, we really should have came back in like February, but then this Russia thing happened. Like nobody could have predicted a war. But now, like, you have Terra buying like 3 billion and El Salvador buying 500 million and all this stuff and all these crypto funds coming in. So I just think a recovery is going to happen, but we don't know when. But I've been constantly posting bullish stuff, right? Even on Twitter, you probably see like people are like, "Shut up, you're stupid. Like we're in a bear market or whatever." But I'm like, just wait, wait 3 to 6 months. Like I haven't sold anything. I've just been holding, and just been patient. But yeah, it's usually like I have a conviction, but there's usually a very strong incentive as to why I believe a certain way. I'm not just doing it out of a pure arrogance thing, but it's just, if I'm right, it'll be a good payoff. If I'm wrong, then hopefully I minimize my risk as much as I possibly can. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind if I give you what I think you have some superpowers as well? It's like,
Sure.
Is that cool if I share that?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, obviously I don't know you that well, but like you're out there, I watch you, try to pay attention, but like, I feel like you have this really good ability to spot things. And I think it matches a little bit with what you were saying. You have an ability to spot things that are very long-term beneficial. Because I think like everybody has, and my experience in business has been like, I watch some companies and some people behave in a way that like, it's very lucrative short-term, but it doesn't scale at all. Like, like it runs into scaling issues, like theft. I mean, not that everyone's a thief, but like theft has scaling issues. Every time you steal something, you could get caught and go to jail, or, you can only steal from so many people, or people suspect you're a thief, and, there are, defenses are raised and it gets harder every time.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like you're really, really, really good at knowing where long-term choices you make don't run into scaling issues. So, and you pick very like wisely in that aspect. And it's like, I don't know that everybody can do that. That's a really tough thing to know how to do. And I also feel like you get into really good relationships, because everybody makes choices on short-term and long-term scales, and sometimes you have to, have to eat, have to make a short-term choice, and it has a long-term benefit. But, I feel like you're really good at partnering with people in a long-term way as well. So like my experience with everybody that you've hired to work at StormX and anyone else has worked at, they all have that same like mindset where it's like, they're laser focused on, we're going to invest in people and things that don't run into scaling problems. Like this thing can continue to grow because we're not making short-term expedient choices at the sacrifice of a long-term viability that's going to create, a hurdle we can't get through later on. And so like, I think that that's something that you're able to do really well. And I think it's really see, but I don't know if you agree with that, if I'm crazy or what, but it's just kind of a vibe and a feel I get from just seeing everything that you do with StormX.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it also does come from experience, like with working with so many people, and especially when we hire, we're very quick to hire and fire kind of thing too. It's like, I mean, we're slower to hire, but if someone's not a good fit with the company culture, then we just let them know, like, hey, it's just not a good fit. You'd be better off at a more stable company like Amazon or Microsoft kind of thing, because it really is different. Like we work a lot of hours and we have significant upside, but at the same time, like it's just so many hours, so many uncertainties and all this stuff. And going back to the whole critical thinking too, you kind of need similar minded people to work with every day. And in terms of like long-term relationships, it's just like I think it's also stems from like seeing my parents or like Asian immigrants running like like teriyaki stores or like laundromats and stuff like that too, where it's just kind of like they work there for the sake of just trying to make an everyday living, but it's not sustainable because in like 10 or 20 years technology changes all this stuff, and ultimately your only path is bankruptcy. Like if you want to start a business, it's like you have to constantly think about how you're going to expand and how you're going to grow, or you should just work at a 9-to-5 job and that could totally be fine. But I got into wanting to run a company because we see so much of a future. Like we're trying to create like at StormX, not just like shopping and earning cash back, but a marketplace for being able to earn money, right? So all these different ways that you can come find ways to just have an extra few dollars or extra $10 or $100 into your pocket. And so there's so much that we can do, and That's why there's never any rest. It's an endless opportunity, and yeah, we always have to. And this is a business that we're here to just keep it as long as we can. So we're not trying to flip it for like in the next 3 to 5 years, but and so that when it comes to that, we have to make sure that the decisions are definitely long-term based and we hire the right people, et cetera. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's neat to see. Being on this side, it's really cool to be able to be a part of the community and work with you guys, because the vibe is so nice. I mean, it can be so toxic in crypto world, but to have a breath of fresh air for people who are genuine and aren't just short-term focused, and I don't begrudge people who have a short-term focus, but sometimes it can be very toxic when people have that such a short focus that it's like, I'm like, are you hurting somebody by having such a narrow focus? And I don't get that vibe from you guys at all. And it's really refreshing.
And I mean, I'm oftentimes on the speculative side as well too, like, for like certain investments and stuff like that. But this is where you sort of see like the difference between retails and professionals, and like why one is wealthier and one is sort of always constantly losing money is like, if I bought into GameStop, for example, I would do whatever I can to try to, spread that word about why this is the best company ever to everyone, right? A lot of crypto people, when things start going south, they start going in there to troll and putting the blame game and all that stuff, and like it only hurts your bags. Like it's kind of a stupid thing, right? Like if you feel that negatively about it, sell and just go away with it. You have like your time a day that you have to invest in other things as well too. Like your time is valuable, but they just go in and troll and just like, it's very short-sighted decisions. It's just like those people are never going to succeed, and it's just I don't know if they'll ever realize like that's not how you're supposed to process decision making. So so hopefully they'll realize out of it.
Well, hopefully, that's all you can do.
Crypto,
So I'm kind of curious, is there one thing that you wish or you want to be sure that the StormX community and just people in general know about you that they don't know? Or is there anything like specific that you would just want to share with people?
I don't know. I mean, I work for the sake of working because like I really believe in the vision. Like I think same with Calvin as well too. Like it's a lot different when like I shit on a lot of projects that try to like pivot into being a blockchain Web3 because they're going bankrupt or whatever. But we've always sort of believed in crypto and like blockchain from the beginning, because it is a much more scalable way to just be able to streamline like from a global perspective. But like what we're building is because both of us really struggled financially, like, and we believe that it's like not just through speculation, but there's a way that we can generally help people be able to earn more and just help people's just everyday life into this kind of shit economy that we're living in right now, where inflation's running through the roof and like just everything is becoming unaffordable for the average person. Because I've been there, and and then like even though like on a bad day, like I'm working like crazy, like insane hours, and then I just get a bombardment of messages of like people telling me to go fuck off or do whatever, and just all these negative messages. I put up with all of it because at the end of the day, we still want to help as many people as possible. And I think that's the big difference between us and a lot of different crypto companies for sure. So.
That's awesome. Well, we all appreciate it in the community and everybody that's a part of this. So we appreciate that, what you guys put into this. I mean, it's a huge sacrifice, but we're proud to be a part of the StormX community too. So that's really cool. We appreciate it. But so that's kind of all the time I wanted to take from you today, Simon. Again, I really appreciate you being willing to have this conversation and to be available for the community. Thanks
for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So see you guys.